Welcome to Girl Choose Yourself, where we're trading self-doubt for self-trust and settling for soaring. I'm Emer, your host, and together we're building the confidence to create lives so deliciously bold that they scare us a little, but in the best possible way. Because life's too precious to stay cozy in our comfort zones. It's time to choose ourselves for lives that are fabulous and soulfully fulfilling. So let's go. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Emer, and last week we explored the radical and courageous practice of self-forgiveness. And today we're going to take the next step, I guess, or looking further into this area of forgiveness and something that's often even harder for some people, and that is the practice of forgiving others. And I want to say up front, forgiving others doesn't mean that we're condoning what happened, we're condoning the actions of the other party or parties. It doesn't mean that we're going to eradicate it from our memories. And it certainly doesn't mean that we're going to let the harm continue, or that we are going to continue in a relationship with somebody who has caused us harm. What it does mean, though, is releasing our heart from that weight of betrayal, anger, resentment, grief. And so what we're going to look at today, and what you'll walk away with, I hope, after listening to the episode, is an understanding of, first of all, why forgiving others often feels impossible or just really, really hard. We're going to look at the most common myths around this area of forgiveness. And thirdly, how forgiveness is really for you. It's not the other person. I actually see this area as part of self-care, but we're going to get into that. We're also going to be hearing stories that show what's possible when we do feel that we can and we do choose forgiveness. And finally, I'm going to offer a short reflection that you can try right now if that feels comfortable and like it's the right time and you're in the right place to accept that invitation. As one of my teachers, Jack Kornfield, says, forgiveness is a way to free the heart and spirit from the sufferings of the past. So let's jump in. First of all, I want to really name a truth that every one of us has been hurt. Every one of us has been hurt. We've been betrayed, we've been let down at some point in our lives, and no one is exempt from that. Everybody has had that experience. And when we're in that place of hurt, forgiveness can really feel impossible, absolutely impossible. We might think, how could I ever forgive when the suffering still continues? Or why should I forgive when what happened was so wrong? Or even some things are simply unforgivable. Like there's a category of things and they just shouldn't ever be forgiven. And here's the thing that I really want to impress is that sometimes forgiveness isn't appropriate right away. Like if you've been hurt, what's needed first is, safety. We need stability, and we really need self-compassion. And forgiveness is not about bypassing our pain and doing something because we feel that we should or we have to do it. It really is a practice that must unfold in its own time. And that's different for everybody. And rushing it is counterproductive. It just doesn't work. So let's start by clearing up some of the most common misconceptions around this challenging and tricky area of forgiveness of others. And firstly, it just does not mean that you're condoning what happened. Many of us, many people have really suffered real significant harm at the hands of other people. And it's not about condoning. It doesn't mean that you say, I was okay, it was okay. It doesn't mean you forgive and forget. You erase it. Forgiveness also doesn't mean that you have to stay in relationship with the person who harmed you at all. Sometimes forgiveness absolutely requires distance and boundaries. And boundaries, tricky area. And I've spoken about that before, so maybe after listening to this episode, you might like to look back at the earlier episode where I talked about boundaries. Here's what forgiveness really is. This is what I think it really is. It's protecting yourself. It's protecting yourself while you're releasing resentment or even hatred, which is so corrosive. Forgiveness is a gift that we give to ourselves, to our own heart. And I really think that forgiveness is also a really powerful way, a necessary way, for me at least, of refusing to be chained to the past. It really is a freedom practice. Challenging, difficult, complicated, yes, but very freeing. Abraham Lincoln said this. He said, I've always found that mercy bears richer fruits than strict justice. And that made me think on this topic of forgiveness as well. It's not about weakness. It's about creating a world where our hearts are free enough to move forward. Free enough to move forward. I want to share with you some stories here, because forgiveness becomes real when we see it lived out. And the world right now in particular, is very divided. And there's a lot of anger, resentment, hatred. And so I feel it's probably quite timely to be sharing stories of forgiveness. My teacher, Jack Kornfield, told this story in one of our classes in the mindfulness meditation teacher training program about his own father, who was violent, apparently, and abusive and very unpredictable. And it took him years and years of practice and training, this is Jack, before he could see his father not through that lens of hurt, but with a recognition that this man, his father, this man too, was doing the best that he could in the midst of all of his own brokenness. And that kind of shift didn't happen overnight, but over many years of practice. And obviously Jack Kornfield is very much dedicated practitioner to mindfulness meditation and Buddhist practices. And so it does just show us what's possible, though. Or think of Cambodia. Mahagoshananda, known as the Gandhi of Cambodia, lost 19 members of his family in the Khmer Rouge genocide in Cambodia. And yet he led people back through the killing fields with chants of loving kindness and reclaiming not only their land in the process, but also their dignity. Here's another story. This is from the Amish community in Pennsylvania, where there was a man who murdered young girls in a schoolhouse. a terrible act, a terrible tragedy in that community, so much hurt and pain. And the very next day, the community, the Amish community, reached out to the perpetrator's family, offering forgiveness. And when they were asked if they'd held a meeting to decide on this community response, an elder from the Amish community in Pennsylvania said, like, a meeting? This is who we are. Without forgiveness, we are chained to the past. So in sharing these stories, I by no means mean to minimize in any way the pain of betrayal. I merely offer them as reminders that forgiveness is not about the other person's worthiness. It is about our own dignity, our own freedom. And I believe in that we find that it's a very powerful practice of choosing ourselves, of honoring ourselves, of loving ourselves. So how do we actually practice forgiving others? I want to offer a few steps that may be helpful. And first, I think it's really important to start where it's easy or easier. Like, don't begin with our biggest wound. Begin wherever your heart feels ready, where there's some openness, not where the grip is tight or that wound that you've been nursing for a long time. That's not where we want to start. Start where it's easier. And then step 2 is remember who this practice is for. The people who hurt you, they might be off enjoying their lives while you're here replaying the pain. And forgiveness is primarily for your well-being. Forgiveness is primarily for your well-being. That's who it's for. I think often when I am doing a forgiveness practice of other people, I can get lost in they don't deserve it. And I really have to bring myself back to this second step and remember who this is for. It's not about them being deserving of forgiveness. It's for me. It's for my well-being. Step 3 is to practice perspective taking. And this doesn't mean excusing harm, but it can mean asking, what might it have been like for them? What might it have been like for the person who caused us harm? And I'm not saying that you force this. You just offer that question to yourself and see what might open inside of you as you receive that question. Often when we hear someone's story, we really glimpse the chain of suffering, if you will, being passed from one generation to the next. And step 4, hold even your resistance with compassion. So this isn't a once and done practice, obviously. And resistance is expected and it's common. And it's just we want to hold that resistance when it arises with compassion. Sometimes the most honest thing that we can say with this practice to ourselves is, I cannot forgive right now. I cannot forgive right now. And you hold that truth with tenderness until your heart softens. I've heard this quote around this topic of forgiveness, that the work of forgiveness is not for the faint-hearted. And yet it's one of the most powerful trainings for the heart. So I want to offer a short reflection, and as I did last week, just a gentle reminder that this is best practiced or listened to when you are in a quiet spot, and definitely not if you're driving. So let's try a short reflection together, if it's safe. I invite you to gently just close your eyes and take a deep breath. And as you continue to take deep breaths, just relax your shoulders. Notice and relax any obvious tension in your face, around your eyes, your jaw. And on your exhalations, just noticing and releasing wherever you might be holding any tightness in your body. And now bring to mind a small hurt, not the biggest one, something lighter, something manageable. Just bring that to mind, something you've been maybe replaying in your mind, holding on to. It's been causing a little friction and niggle. And ask yourself, what is it costing me to hold on to this? What is it costing me to hold on to this? Notice what it feels like in your body, in your nervous system. And then ask yourself this: if I were to forgive, who is it really for? If I were to forgive, who is it really for? Giving space for your inner wisdom to give you that answer. And finally, offer yourself a compassionate phrase. May my heart be free. May my heart be free from this weight. Or may I find peace. And taking another breath, gently opening your eyes. Big breath, big release. Such an important practice. Such a practice, I feel, of choosing ourselves and self-honoring, self-care, self-love. And so I invite you to think about where in your life you may be feeling depleted energetically because you're holding on to some hurts that it's time now maybe to let go of through a practice of forgiveness. So here's what I want you to remember. And this is so important, which is why I keep repeating it. Forgiveness is not condoning. It's not condoning. It's not weakness. Forgiveness is courage. Forgiveness is dignity. And forgiveness is freedom. As the Bhagavad Gita says, if you want to see the brave, look to those who can return love for hatred. If you want to see the heroic, look to those who can forgive. So this week, I'm going to invite you to notice, where are you still chained to the past? Where is there a place, however small, where forgiveness could begin, however small? Because forgiving others is not letting them off the hook. It's really letting ourselves out of the prison of resentment, unchaining ourselves from that past. And it's choosing ourselves. It's choosing ourselves again. So until next time, look after yourself, go gently, and as always, Choose yourself. Thanks so much for tuning into the episode this week. I hope you got a lot out of it, and if you did, please share it with somebody who you feel would benefit. And leave a review. Always greatly appreciated. Lots of free and paid resources to take things a step further. You can find those in the show notes. And hey, if nobody's told you this yet today, you are amazing, and the world is a far more beautiful place because you're here with us all. Stay cool. Bye.